Fortunately, we have solved all our technical problems and we are ready to start our roundtable. I would like to introduce Mr. R. Dula, who will moderate this roundtable. And at the same time, I would like to invite to this table. It is not round, but I think it's enough for our session. I would like to invite lecturer of Faculty of Law, Irina Chernik. I would like to invite also representative of international telecommunication company Intersputnik, lawyer Yaroslav Vasanin. I kindly ask to take the place here also Director of Department of Geology and Oil and Gas Engineering, Professor Alexander Drozdov. I think enough. Yes, enough. I give you.
Okay. Good afternoon. Sorry for the technical glitch at the beginning. I'm going to, if you could move it from this screen to this screen, can you do that? I wasn't exactly sure what the roundtable would be, so I didn't send Yuri a summary presentation or anything, because most of the time the moderator doesn't do anything but just sit and introduce people. But I think in this one it would be best if I took 5 minutes, if you'll allow me a moderator's discretion, to introduce myself so you'll know what I'm trying to say here, so it will be in context and you'll be able to understand it a little bit. I think they're trying to figure out how to move it from this screen to this screen. Okay? Can you put it up here? No. Well, not everybody will be able to read that.
Arbitrarily? No, but you can't choose.
My name is Art Dula. I'm an attorney from Houston, Texas. I've worked in aerospace law since about 1975. I'm going to introduce myself and what I'm doing at a little bit of length because I want to talk about a book that we put out. And it'll take about 5 minutes while they're switching. Yeah, there we go. Okay. I was the attorney who incorporated the corporation that launched the first private space vehicle in the United States in 1982. We launched to 253 miles, and there were no laws of any kind at that time. We did it without any permission or any license, and it was quite successful. I also incorporated the company and ran the company that bought the first proton rockets from the Soviet Union to launch American satellites. Specifically, we sold the rockets to Hughes Communication. And later on, after the end of the Soviet Union, this was a very successful use of the Russian proton rocket, which has launched many communication satellites. And I also was one of the founders and the lawyer for SpaceHab, which is a module that goes in the American Space Shuttle, which is now a retired system, but it flew many times and it carried many astronauts and experiments. So I have some background in this. Now, this is the Chinese version of a International Academy of Astronautics study on space mineral resources. And the English version was printed 2 years ago. This version was printed last year and distributed all over China. And I am a partner with the Chinese Astronautics Publishing Company, and we are updating right now this study to bring it up to 2020. Next slide. I'm going to go through these very quickly. I'm going to give you an introduction, a little bit about the AAS study, which represents the most recent encyclopedic study of space mineral resources, and then talk about the commercial activities and into the future, and then we'll open up the roundtable. Is that okay? Is that acceptable to my co-members? Next slide. My company is Excalibur Almaz. We have purchased and exported from Russia 3 capsules, Almaz reusable re-entry vehicles, and 1 Salyut space station, and we are in the process of using these for business purposes in the West. More details later if you want them. I will show you a few pictures. I'm not trying to advertise my company. Next slide. We were a finalist in the commercial crew competition for NASA to carry semi-finalists. We didn't get any money from them, but we did get a contract with NASA, a Space Act agreement, to study using the Almaz capsule to commercially take astronauts to the space station. And this is the NASA poster for the commercial crew program. You can see our little capsules right there. Again, it's a Russian capsule. It came from NPO Machinostroyenia in Ryotov, and it is a brilliant piece of engineering. We successfully completed our Space Act agreement with NASA, and we were deemed to be technically qualified to continue, but we ran out of money. This often happens with startup companies, but we were deemed technically qualified by NASA. Next slide. It's just a news report, keep going. This is the capsule, next slide. This is how it works, and all the things we studied. We spent quite a bit of money doing engineering here in Russia, and we still plan to fly this capsule, hopefully for the state of Israel, as an unmanned space capsule while we're earning more money. Next slide. This is the interior. Next slide. And these are our capsules. They are in Britain and France. Next slide. And this is the Almaz space station we have, and it is a shell. It needs onboard equipment, but it is, has a long flight history on space stations such as the Mir, the Salyut, and the International Space Station has 2 of these modules. Next slide. This is one of those modules in orbit. Next slide. And we like the capsule. We painted it white, but we think it's a very good piece of equipment. Keep going. Okay, keep going. This is in Saudi Arabia. Next slide. Okay, and here in Israel. Next slide. And this is crazy, but keep going. It's an idea we got down. The Heinlein Prize, I'm a trustee, we give $250,000 to anybody that can win our prize. Next slide. Robert Heinlein was a science fiction writer. By the way, we've signed a contract with a Russian publisher to publish all of his works in Russia, and that will be in the next couple of years. Next slide. Always listen to experts. They'll tell you what can not be done and why. And then you should go do it anyway. Because I want you to think about what's impossible. Many of the things that we'll talk about on this panel will seem completely impossible if you go from the past. They're all going to happen, and they're going to happen soon. Next slide. We give $250,000 to anybody. We're looking for somebody to give it to. So if you know anybody that has made an accomplishment in commercial space activities, we're interested. It has to be commercial, it can't be financed by the government, it has to be already accomplished, and it has to happen in space, and it has to be significant. This prize is about 10 times larger than any other prize in aerospace. We've given it 3 times. Next slide. We've given it to Jeff Bezos for Spaceship One, to this possibly recognizable rich guy, Peter Diamandis, Jeff Bezos. I've got to get my billionaires straight in my head. This guy's Jeff Bezos, and he won it for the BE-4 engine series that is driving the New Shepard and the New Glenn launch vehicles. Next slide. And there he is with the sword that we give away, and he waved that sword around and almost cut somebody with it. Keep going. Okay, we also show spacesuits all over the world. And I have with me today a piece of the moon, a piece of Mars, and a piece of a metal asteroid. Since we're talking about space mineral resources, I'd like to invite you at the close of our discussion to come up and actually hold in your hand a piece of the moon, a piece of Mars, and a piece of a metal asteroid, because this is where the wealth of the 21st century will come from. And you, at this university, are ideally suited to be the people that start the companies that earn that wealth. Bezos wasn't always rich. Elon Musk, who's the other fellow who won our prize, wasn't always rich. Next slide. Okay, this guy is an advisor to us. You probably recognize him. He walked on the moon. He is trying very hard to get cycler orbits used to go to Mars, and your optimization techniques will help him do that. Thank you very much. Keep going. Okay, and keep going. More people seeing spacesuits. Here's Elon Musk when he was 33 years old. He hasn't launched a damn thing into space yet. And yet 6 months after this, he got a $1.8 billion NASA fixed price contract to deliver cargo to the space station. And that money allowed him to build the Falcon 9. So just think, you don't have to have money, you just have to have smart lawyers, right? Smart lawyers. Next slide. We exhibit spacesuits in Britain. This is Tim Peake, British astronaut. Keep going. And also we show spacesuits to other possibly recognizable world figures, as Queen Elizabeth. Keep going. Well, here's the book. Now, everybody in this room, at the end of this talk, if you will give me just your email, or give Elena Perry-Pokin, my assistant, your email, my company in Houston will mail you a link that will allow you to have this book for free. Now, we normally sell it for $49.95, but you get it for free because of the fact that URI is holding this conference, and it's a wonderful conference. I've learned more here than in the last 10 conferences that I went to. Next slide. Oh, we have a few other books that we publish. Next slide. And keep going. Okay, now, a few years ago, I realize I'm a little over time now. I'll take just a few minutes of mine. The IAA, the International Academy of Astronautics, the people with these little blue buttons on that look like the Legion of Honor. As a matter of fact, you can get saluted on the street by the policemen in France if they are nearsighted, because they might think this is the Legion of Honor. And I think that may have been delivered by the French people that set it up. But this book is a reference book on the economics, the technology, the law, and the policy of the utilization of space mineral resources. It won the IAA Basic Science Book Award this year, or last year for 2018. And my co-editor on it, the book's gone now, the co-editor is the head of the Chinese Space Law Society for the whole country of China. That's why we published it also in Chinese. Keep going. Okay, here are the conclusions that study came up with. Basically, the government, I'll summarize. The government's not going to do it. The government can help. The government can incentivize. The government can move roadblocks out of the way. But it's going to be done by commercial interests or by state interests that do things like oil and gas mining, where they can accumulate large amounts of capital. I would be willing to bet anything I have that the greatest fortune of the 21st century will be made in outer space, and that it will be made largely in the area of space mining and utilization of resources in space. And the reason for that is, as we move first hundreds, then thousands, and then millions of people into space, we must live off the land. We cannot bring everything out of the gravity well of the Earth. So with that, I'll start the panel. I think I've said as much as I should, and I'll turn it over to the other speakers. Should I ask you a question to start off? Well, you're a lawyer, right? And tell us what you do in law and how you think that the Russian Federation and this university can participate in helping people to understand how to use space mineral resources and starting up new businesses to do it. Okay, is that reasonable?
Thank you, Professor, for the word. Let me introduce to you myself too. My name is Erin Chernych, and I'm the assistant of International Law Department of this university, People's Friendship University of Russia. Arthur asked me to tell you about what we do here in Russia and of course in this university concerning international space law, concerning law, international law in general. I would like to tell you that in our university here we have special program which dedicated to studying of international space law. We have a special master's program, and the history of this study has very long roots. First of all, one of the founders of international space law, Professor Gennady Petrovich Zhukov, worked here. Maybe do you know him? Great. And yes, he worked here, and after his death, his wife gave us a very big present to our department. She gave us some of books, some of his studies, and here we established and created the Center of International Space Law, named by Professor Gennady Petrovich Zhukov. Due to this fact, our students, our PhD students in our university have a great opportunity to study, first of all, the theory of international space law, and of course to study new problems and to study new challenges which we have in our branch today. And one of these challenges, as Professor has already said, is space mining. Concerning the position of Russian Federation in this question, the position of our state is completely controversial with the position of United States of America and such kind of states as Luxembourg or Arab Emirates. Why? Maybe I try to briefly tell you about our position, because you know I don't know other all lawyers or most of all engineers and students from technical professions. Are you a lawyer?
No.
No? Who is a lawyer in this audience, just for understanding? Okay. So, not so many people, but I think I just make like an introduction to this question for another people. We have 5 treaties in international space law. First treaty is 1967 Outer Space Treaty, like the Constitution of the International Space Law. The second one is the Rescue Agreement. Yes, thank you, Professor. 1968 The next one is Liability Convention, 1972. One more is Registration Convention, dated 1975. And the last international treaty was drafted in 1979, and the name of this treaty is Moon Agreement. Just 5 international treaties in our branch. Also, we have lots of soft law documents, such as General Assembly resolutions, the working documents of UN Corpus, the special body of the United Nations, which is responsible for legal and scientific directions in the sphere, and lots of agreements between states. One of the special agreements is about exploitation of International Space Station, 1998. So, and we have 5 treaties, but unfortunately to date we don't have any special international regime of space mining. If you look through these 5 treaties, and the position of Russian Federation is based on the basic provision of Outer Space Treaty 1967, that outer space should not be appropriated by another states, that outer space is free, that outer space and other celestial bodies are for all human being, for all mankind. And the official position of Russian Federation that states mustn't explore or utilize by anywhere celestial bodies and its mineral resources. And if you look through the working documents of the legal subcommittee, in which from 2016 year, if I'm not mistaken, we had special item concerning this question, and you can find more detailed information about this question. But United States, as you know, has another position. It has its own national legislation, its national act 2015, 15, yes, which has an opportunity to citizens of United States of America to explore, to utilize national resources. And today we have just the question, what will be the next, because the international space law is silent about it. The official position of the United Nations is an agenda, as I have already said, that we just have an item and discussion in the framework of the United Nations. And we have different positions, different opinions of some states. We have the position of United States mostly, and position in other states which agree or not agree with this position. Maybe I also would like to introduce our student, if he doesn't mind. In our audience we have Maxim Alexeyev. Stand up, please. Maxim Alexeyev is a student of MGIMO University, and he is one of the students who regularly participates in the roundtables of our department, and he is like the student who is specialized in the question of our today's round table about mining, about exploration and utilization of natural resources. I hope he will one of the best lawyers in this sphere. As Professor said, that this branch of law is very young, and we need specialists in this branch of law. And I think it concludes my part of speech, and I would like to give the floor my colleague from the Intersputnik, Yaroslav Masanin.
I think she'll give it back to the moderator first, right, Irina? Thank you very much, Irina. Irina pointed out very cogently that there are differences of opinion around the world with respect to what law should control the mining of space resources and their utilization. Typically, I would like to add a point of clarification, and that point is that the United Nations is not a government. It is a forum for discussion, and they are able to propose treaties, but they are not a nation, and they do not have jurisdiction or the ability to make law for any country. That being said, their opinions, both as treaty drafts and as General Assembly resolutions, are very persuasive to national law. International treaties, however, do not bind individuals, they bind states. And this is a point that is often forgotten by the people in Vienna who discuss these matters. They treat it as if it is positive law property, so-called, and it's not. The state has a general duty, once it exceeds and ratifies a treaty, to generate national law that implements that treaty, that controls its citizens. And some countries have done this. For example, the United States has done this with regard to communications, with regard to remote sensing, where it found the UN position very persuasive. And it now has done so with regard to the use of space resources by Americans, as Luxembourg and other countries are following. I simply wanted to make the point that the word law, as I use it, means something that has a binding effect on an individual or country's actions. And the United Nations is not a body that can generate such things. But I'd like to ask Yaroslav, as a representative of a company, right? A Intersputnik, is it a company?
It's an intergovernmental international organization.
So it's like Intelsat.
Yeah, like Intelsat was.
But it has separate juridical existence.
No.
No.
So now only as an international organization. So we combine the functions of an international organization and a space communications operator. So we still combine it. We didn't have a privatization back in, 20 years ago. So we still hold the status of an international organization.
Well, as I understand it, Intelsat, which is the other big international, it has privatized.
Yeah.
It has become a private company.
Yeah.
And what I'd like to ask you, since you own resources in space, you have satellites, and you make use of sunlight, that's a resource in space, right? Yes. So could I ask you, do you think that someday Intersputnik might be able to use space resources of metal, of planetary regolith, not to claim a body, but to use its resources?
First of all, thank you for the question. So honestly, it's the first time I'm asked something like that, but again, I'll try to answer. So firstly, I have to say that the space resources, it's the mining, the exploitation is not what we are tasked with. So we have our international treaties that almost 50 years ago established our organization, and we have a specific purpose to create satellite communications, to create a special network and to allow our member states and our participants to use it. So that's the only goal that we have. So, and even if someday we'll need to use space resources in order to support our other space activities, we wouldn't be able to do that, just because that's not our mission. And only if our member state decide that we need to do some other space activities and they make amendments to our treaties, to our documents, maybe in that case we will be able to do that.
Well, might I ask you a very practical question? Let's say that my company, Excalibur, through its branch Excalibur Exploration, was able to produce aluminum from the regolith of the moon, and you needed aluminum to take and build a platform, a big communications platform. Now, I know you could buy it on the Earth. Could you buy it in space?
In this case, I do not see any obstacles, so I just don't see any differences between buying it on Earth or from your moon company. So yeah, by me it's okay.
Or perhaps creating a Russian company.
Yeah, why not? Why not?
Plenty of rockets here in Russia.
Yeah, of course.
Could you pass down and please introduce yourself?
Good day. My name is Alexander Drozdov. I am a head of the Department of Mineral Development and Oil and Gas Engineering. Thank you very much, Mr. Dula, for your very interesting and beautiful report. It is very useful for me and, of course, for our students of specialty oil and gas engineering, which they are now in this room, and it's very useful. I am sure that in the future we shall drill exploration wells for mineral development, and in the future we can produce oil and gas, gold and coal and other mineral resources on the moon and the planets. Thank you very much.
I'm going to use my position as a moderator to make a comment on Alexander's. The oil and gas industry is an excellent historical analog to the development of outer space resources, because it illustrates both state and private development. In Russia, the development is by the state corporation. I think it's called Rosneft or something like that. And privately in the United States, privately owned corporations do the same thing. And this is true all over the world. For example, in Mexico, it's a state company, but in other countries, it's private companies. So you can have both. You don't have to choose one. But all of these companies must accumulate capital and must be responsible corporate citizens. And they operate under national law, even though they may work within an international framework. So it's the concept of selling a resource and raising the money to develop it. You could develop space mining for about the same cost as developing the North Sea oil. And the economic model on that is an excellent analog. You had a question.
Yes, thank you for this possibility. So, I would like to offer you to discuss the issue of space mining from another angle. So, since today we have a rather technical conference, and I hope that there are a lot of technical experts, engineers, and other professionals. So I would like to ask you a question to both my colleagues and the audience. Are we truly ready to use and extract space resources, or this is just our, let's say, near future or just our future? Because honestly, I think that we're still very far from the real technologies that would allow us to use space resources. Of course, we should discuss this topic already, but in my opinion, there are another more important questions in space law, like space traffic management, space debris, and others. So my question is, how do you think, are we really ready to mine space resources, and shall we already discuss this topic from the legal point of view?
Excellent question. Would you like to take a crack at it, my colleague?
Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you, Yaroslav, for your question. I'm not an engineer, you know, I'm a lawyer. I agree with you that today we have most important questions, like you have already mentioned, like space debris mitigation guideline, space debris mitigation or space traffic management, because are on agenda today. We have lots of space debris. Concerning your question, are we ready for space mining? In my opinion, like a citizen of Russian Federation, I think not today. I think that it's our future, but for this future, we will have to think, maybe not today, but for this future we will have to be ready and to think, just start thinking about international legal regime, because Mr. Dula said that citizens can use the opportunity to mine resources, to think about it, and United States has its national legislation, but in spite of this fact, we just remember about the outer space. It's like has extraterritorial status, and states have obligations in accordance with international law to follow the provisions which we have or which we don't haven't had yet. So, Yaroslav, concerning your question, I think it is our future, but we will have to draft and to adopt an international regime.
Thank you. I am ready, but the industry is not ready because in the head of the director of oil and gas company there is a money meter, money. And in the future, I am sure the situation would be better.
And again, I'm going to comment and then ask you a question in the audience.
But what do you think about?
You want to have my thought, my personal thought? Oh, I think it's wonderful. I think we're going to start using things tomorrow. I'm a patent attorney. I like things like that weird presentation on mathematics that was put on. I really liked that. And I can tell you that in the patent law of the United States, and in the it's been extended to outer space, and there are now inventions pending in the US Patent Office, and I'm sure in the Russian Patent Office, for mining the moon, for taking and making useful things out of lunar rock. For example, oxygen. For example, from water on the moon, hydrogen and oxygen. But the question here that I heard you say is perhaps it's not time yet to do that. That first we must solve the legal problems, and I must tell you I disagree with that respectfully. Because if you try to make a law in advance of reality, you will always have a very difficult problem because you won't know what you're actually doing, and you will put into effect what's called a Platonic fallacy of everything should be wonderful, everybody should be equal, it's the kumbaya process. Real law must take into account the real interests of states and people. If you fail to do that, you simply create the conditions for conflict. And you do not want to do that because space has much more energy and much more matter in it than the Earth. You want to be very careful. But we do need to develop law. I believe that national law can handle this. But I think also there must be some sort of a general international framework, and I think we have one in the Outer Space Treaty and the 4 other treaties. The Moon Treaty is largely a failed treaty. It's not been adopted by many countries. So I'd like to ask you, how many people in the audience, and raise your hand high so I can count them, would be willing to go into space and work doing mining in space if it was profitable and you could get a job there? How many people? I would. Okay, I've got 1, I've got 2, I've got 3. I've got almost enough for a crew for a small spaceship. I know he would go, he's just embarrassed to raise his hand. Okay, well, I can tell you that a study was done on this because universities study everything. And about 40% of the students in American universities would go into space to work in space. And that's why Jeff Bezos, who's the richest man in the world, Elon Musk, who certainly has a lot of money, Sir Richard Branson, and many others, self-made billionaires are trying to start private space programs. There are over 100 launch vehicle companies forming right now, trying to build launch vehicles. 100 all over the world. Even New Zealand has launched a rocket to space. So this is going to happen very quickly. It's an exponential curve, if I can use the mathematical term, where more than half of the change occurs in the last period of time, no matter how you slice it, if it's exponential. You and your children will work and live in space, and it won't be a rare thing. I would predict that the word astronaut will not be used, that the word cosmonaut will not be used. Instead, we will have pilots, passengers, farmers. How do you think we're going to raise the food in space if we don't have farmers? And I noticed that, we've now had some ladies go into space. I think many more ladies should go into space because we're going to have children there. It's very hard to do that without the ladies. So I hope you'll think about planning to go into space in the future and to work there, to live there. And to do that, we have to have a way to make it pay. We can't do it for free. If there's no bucks, there's no Buck Rogers. Now, that's an Americanism. Buck Rogers was a comic book character that went into space. Does that answer your question, Rose? Or would you like to reply?
So, yeah, firstly, I'd like to make a comment concerning your answer. Honestly, I didn't mean that we should first establish a proper regulation for space mining before doing that. My point is that probably we don't have yet necessary technologies to really mine resources. And I don't know when we will have it. So we still need to develop it, then send it to space, test, and it will take a lot of time. So my point is that probably right now we should pay attention to more important questions. Yeah.
I think I understand what you're asking now. There's no doubt that's true. Space traffic management, situational awareness, making sure you don't run into things when you're taking off and landing. getting the law worked out between airplanes and spaceships. Right now in the United States, the biggest thing that's happening in aerospace is the generation of regulations allowing private spacecraft to fly in the same airspace as private airplanes, like airliners. And there is a terrific political fight going on that's worth billions of dollars. Because the airplane owners, that's the big airlines, they thought they owned the whole sky. And they were kind of disturbed when they found out that they didn't, that the rockets have a right to. But to give you an idea of the size of the industry, right now, just in America, there are 6 manned vehicles under development. None of them have flown yet. They will all fly in the next 2 years. Now, I suggest to you that with the Angara 5 from Russia, the Long March 5 and 9 from China, the Ariane 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, and all of these will be eclipsed by Jeff Bezos' New Armstrong and New Glenn, which not one penny of government money is in it. It's entirely a private activity. And if Elon Musk ever gets his Starship running, now, you know, that vehicle can carry 100 passengers. And he's already flying the test vehicle in Texas. It's already going up and down in test flights. He calls it the hopper, like a rabbit. Now, on the 19th of June, last week, Elon Musk made a public announcement that as soon as his Starship makes its first orbital test flight successfully, he will start selling tickets to the public. Now, tickets means money. And the last time that old Elon did this, he had an idea called the Tesla 3 Roadster. Have you ever seen a Tesla Roadster? It's a car, it's a sports car. He had not built it, but he decided, I'll sell it anyway. And he sold 200,000 of them, and he used that money to build the vehicle. So maybe this is a new way to form capital. But for space minerals, we're going to form capital just like we do for oil and gas. We're going to say, I'll give you a specific example, and it's not water from the moon, it's nickel from nickel iron asteroids. And remember, we have a piece of an asteroid here for you to look at. If you deliver just 10% of the world's supply of nickel from extraterrestrial sources, you have a business that is worth $30 billion. It's $3 billion a year in income and a stock multiplier of 10. Now, does anybody think that that's not going to be done? If there's that much money in it and we have all these spaceships that can go up and down, I think that we're really heading for a very interesting time in the future. What do you think?
About our future.
Are we over time, Yuri? Are we over time? Yuri, would you like to make a comment?
Thank you, Arthur. I would like to say that we usually believe our lawyers, and we rely upon the assistance in all problem situations. But in all cases, I would like to remind that usually we say space law and technical policy, and these two issues should in all cases connected closely, and we have to consider different technical details when we try to solve any problem in space law. I would like to remind you also that our SciTech Forum and our conference provided with the assistance of International Academy of Astronautics, and we know that in the frame of different research activities of the Academy we have different study groups, and most of them are devoted not only to technical issues but also to issues in space law and policy. By the way, we are working together with actually maybe together he knows in the study group titled as Next Generation Space System Development based on orbit service and concept, for instance. And he knows and I agree that there are many problems which we have to solve in the near future. I agree with we cannot get any resources right now from the moon tomorrow, for instance, but we have to be ready to do it. And we have to be ready to do it also tomorrow, because who knows, maybe Elon Musk will find, or maybe Russian Elon Musk will find something new, and we can really will get resources maybe the day after tomorrow. Thank you.
Probably not a closing, but a comment to what just you said. So firstly, I'm completely agreed that space law is closely connected to all the technical issues that are related to space activities, and that is reflected in the structure of the United Nations Committee on Outer Space that has two subcommittees, so technical and legal. So lawyers are invited to take into account what the technicians say. So I think it's obvious. And secondly, I would like to remind that the International Academy of Astronautics has a special partner that occupies with the legal issues of space exploration. This is the International Institute of Space Law, and this institute several years ago prepared a special report on the legal issues of space mining. So if you are interested in this topic, you can just go to their official website and take a look at it. Thank you.
Thanks. Alexander, would you like to make some comments?
Yes, with the help of Roscosmos, NASA, Elon Musk and others, we can develop the new technologies for exploration and production of mineral resources, and can investigate the laws of production, of exploitation, of well completion, and other technical questions in the space applications.
Do you have a question or a comment or remarks?
Concerning remarks, thank you, Yaroslav, for reminding about International Institute for Space Law for our students. Firstly, I would like to add that our university has institutional membership in this International Institute for Space Law, and every year, not every year, but 2 years, we make with our colleagues from Intersputnik not big conference, but like a meeting of members and people who are interested in the activity of International Institute of Space Law here in our university. And if maybe students, not lawyer students, but also engineering students are interested in the questions or in legal questions of space activities, we will be happy to share of our knowledge and to share our opportunities here in studying of space law together with technical side of space activities. Thank you.
To conclude, I'd like to remind you that in law, there is no right answer. There are many possible paths to things that work well, and we should remain flexible as we go into this new frontier, this new ocean, with its resources and its islands and its energy, because literally the survival and the future of humanity depends on us getting off the Earth and becoming a multi-planetary species. So that is your challenge, students at the university. Go forward and do that. And thank you very much for your attention. Oh, remember, we have a piece of the moon for you to look at, a piece of Mars, and a piece of an asteroid. And if you want a copy of that book, which also contains 5 business plans from companies that are trying to mine outer space, all you have to do is to sign up with Elena, and our company will send it to you for free. It'll be an electronic copy, of course. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Arthur. And I would like to say also that all of you have a chance to take Moon and Mars right now on the table. It's really, I'm saying for students, there is a piece of Moon and a piece of Mars on this table. You can come here and touch it.
Thank you very much.
We have a small break for 5 minutes before our next lectures.